The klaxons blared through the corridors of the OSS Intrepid, their shrill wails piercing the usual hum of the ship's systems. Lieutenant Jackson Hanoi raced through the chaos, his Orion marine armor clanking against the metal bulkheads as he shouldered past panicking crew members. Reactor breach imminent. All hands, evacuate immediately. The ship's AI repeated its dire warning, its usual calm voice tinged with urgency. Jackson's mind raced. How had it come to this? One moment, they were on a routine patrol in the outer rim, and the next, the Intrepid's experimental quantum reactor was tearing itself apart. He reached the escape pod bay, relief washing over him as he spotted an unoccupied unit. As he strapped himself in, Jackson caught a glimpse of the ship's status on a nearby monitor. The reactor's containment field was failing rapidly. They had minutes, perhaps seconds. The pod launched with a violent jerk, and Jackson watched through the small viewport as the Intrepid grew smaller. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the ship's core. The shockwave hit his pod like a hammer blow, sending it spinning wildly off course. Warning lights flashed across the pod's console as systems began to fail. The navigation computer sputtered and died, followed quickly by life support. As the pod entered the atmosphere of a nearby planet, Jackson realized with grim certainty that he was going to crash. The descent was a nightmare of fire and noise. Jackson grit his teeth, using every ounce of his training to brace for impact. With a bone-jarring crash, the pod slammed into the planet's surface, skidding across sand before coming to a rest. For a long moment, Jackson lay still, assessing his condition. Nothing seemed broken, though every part of him ached. He popped the hatch, wincing as scorching air rushed in. The landscape before him was a sea of sand and rock, stretching endlessly to the horizon. As he climbed out of the wreckage, the reality of his situation began to sink in. The pod was a loss, its systems fried beyond repair. His armor's long-range communicator was similarly damaged. He was stranded on an unknown world, with no way to call for help. Jackson checked his remaining gear: a sidearm, a few days' worth of emergency rations, and his armor's basic life support functions. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Shielding his eyes from the glare of twin suns, Jackson spotted a shimmer on the distant horizon. It could be a mirage, or it could be civilization. Either way, it was his only hope. With a deep breath, Jackson set out across the desert. Each step sank into the soft sand, making progress slow and grueling. The heat was oppressive, even with his armor's cooling systems working overtime. As he walked, Jackson's thoughts turned to home. To the gleaming spires of Centrium, the capital station of Orion civilization. To his fellow Marines, his family, his life. Would he ever see them again? He pushed the doubt aside. He was an Orion Marine, trained to survive, to adapt, to overcome. This hostile world, whatever it was, would not be his end. As the first sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Jackson allowed himself a grim smile. The distant shimmer had resolved into the unmistakable silhouette of buildings, civilization of a sort. He didn't know what kind of welcome he'd receive. On the fringes of space, an Orion Marine might be seen as a threat as much as a potential ally, but it was his only chance. With renewed determination, Jackson pressed on towards the settlement. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them as he always had, with courage, skill, and the unshakable spirit of an Orion Marine. The sun set, and the desert cold began to seep in. But Jackson Hanoi marched on, one step at a time, towards an uncertain future on this alien world. After 3 grueling days of trekking across the unforgiving desert, Jackson Hanoi stumbled into the outskirts of a ramshackle settlement. The air was thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, cheap alcohol, and something alien he couldn't quite place. Rust-colored buildings of mismatched materials sprawled haphazardly, their shadows offering little respite from the twin suns' relentless heat. Rusmith Jackson muttered to himself, recalling stories he'd heard of this infamous den of pirates and outcasts on the planet Xerxes IV. It wasn't much, but it was his only hope for survival and, perhaps, a way off this desolate rock. As he made his way down what passed for the main street, Jackson felt dozens of eyes on him. His Orion Marine armor, though battered and sand-worn, was unmistakable. Beings of various species watched him warily from doorways and alleyways, some reaching for weapons, others simply ducking out of sight. Jackson's parched throat screamed for moisture, driving him towards a dingy establishment that could generously be called a cantina. As he pushed through the swinging doors, the cacophony of alien languages and clinking glasses abruptly ceased. Every eye in the place turned to stare at the newcomer. Ignoring the hostile glares, Jackson made his way to the bar. The bartender, a grizzled human with more cybernetic implants than original parts, eyed him suspiciously. Water, Jackson croaked, his voice hoarse from days without use and information. The bartender snorted. Water's gonna cost you. Information's gonna cost you more. Jackson placed his sidearm on the bar, its sleek Orion design a stark contrast to the crude weapons carried by the cantina's patrons. How about a trade? The bartender's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on the weapon. He nodded slowly. What do you want to know? I need a ship, Jackson said, scanning the room as he spoke. Something that can get me off this rock and back to Orion space. A harsh laugh rang out behind him. Jackson turned to see a mountain of a man push away from a shadowy booth. He was easily 7 feet tall, with arms like tree trunks and a face crisscrossed with scars. You hear that, boys, the giant bellowed. The little Orion pup wants a ship. The cantina erupted in laughter. Jackson's hand inched towards his weapon, but the giant raised a meaty palm. Easy now, Marine. As it happens, I might have a proposition for you, he grinned, revealing a mouthful of sharpened metal teeth. Name's Crawl, and I run things around here. What kind of proposition? Jackson asked, his voice level despite the tension in the air. Crawl's grin widened. You want a ship? I'll give you a chance to earn one. But I warn you, it won't be easy. Jackson met Crawl's gaze, his jaw set. Nothing worth doing ever is. What did you have in mind? The crime lord's eyes glittered with malicious amusement. Oh, you'll see, Marine. You'll see. He turned to address the cantina at large. Listen up, you scum. Looks like we've got ourselves a new contestant for the arena. The room erupted in cheers and jeers. Jackson felt his stomach sink as he realized what he'd gotten himself into. But he steeled himself, knowing that this might be his only chance to get off Xerxes 4. As Crawl's men surrounded him, leading him out of the cantina and towards an unknown fate, Jackson Hanoi, Orion Marine, prepared himself for the fight of his life. Whatever horrors awaited him in this arena, he would face them head-on. For beyond this challenge lay his ticket home, back to the stars where he belonged. Jackson stood in a dimly lit holding area, surrounded by a motley assortment of aliens and humans. Some looked hardened and battle-scarred, while others seemed little more than terrified civilians. All of them, including Jackson, wore simple jumpsuits and carried no weapons. Crawl's voice boomed over hidden speakers, filling the cramped space. Welcome, fighters, to the Rusmouth Arena. You're here for one reason. You want something. A ship, freedom, credits, it doesn't matter. Only one of you will walk out of here alive, and that person gets their wish granted. Jackson's mind raced. He began to assess his opponents, looking for weaknesses, advantages, anything he could use. His Orion Marine training kicked in, analyzing threats and formulating strategies. The rules are simple, Crawl continued, a hint of sadistic glee in his voice. There are no rules. Fight, kill, survive. Weapons and obstacles will appear randomly throughout the arena. Use them or don't, it's up to you. Let the games begin. A door slid open with a metallic groan, and the fighters poured into a vast, circular arena. The ground was uneven, with pits, trenches, and raised platforms scattered about. High above, spectators cheered and placed bets from behind shimmering force fields. Jackson moved quickly, ducking behind a low wall as chaos erupted around him. He watched as fighters fell upon each other with savage fury, desperation lending strength to their blows. A plasma rifle materialized on a nearby platform, and Jackson sprinted for it. He dove into a roll as a hulking alien lunged at him, coming up with the rifle in his hands. A quick burst, and the alien's chest exploded in a spray of gore. For what felt like hours, Jackson fought with every ounce of skill and determination he possessed. He used the terrain to his advantage, setting traps and ambushes for his opponents. His Orion training proved invaluable, allowing him to outmaneuver and outfight creatures twice his size. A reptilian alien with razor-sharp claws nearly disemboweled him, but Jackson managed to use its momentum against it, sending it tumbling into a spiked pit. A four-armed humanoid wielding twin vibroblades pushed him to his limits, leaving him with a deep gash across his ribs before Jackson finally bested it with a well-placed shot to its central nervous cluster. As the number of combatants dwindled, the arena itself seemed to come alive. Sections of the floor dropped away, revealing pools of acid. Automated turrets emerged from hidden compartments, spraying the area with laser fire. Jackson adapted, using the new hazards to his advantage when he could, avoiding them when he couldn't. Finally, only 2 fighters remained. Jackson found himself face to face with a lithe, serpentine alien wielding a crackling energy whip. They circled each other warily, both battered and exhausted. "You fight well," Human the alien hissed, its forked tongue tasting the air. "But only one of us leaves here alive." Jackson nodded grimly. "Then let's finish this." They clashed in a blur of motion, whip against rifle. Jackson felt the sting of the energy whip across his back, but he pushed through the pain. With a swift kick, he knocked the alien off balance, then brought the butt of his rifle down hard on its skull. As the alien crumpled to the ground, the arena fell silent. Jackson stood alone, bloodied but unbowed, his chest heaving with exertion. Krull's voice rang out once more, tinged with genuine admiration. "We have a winner. The Orion Marine lives up to his reputation." As the crowd roared its approval, Jackson allowed himself a small smile. He had survived the unthinkable, proving the worth of his Orion training in the most brutal way possible. But more importantly, he was one step closer to home. The arena's main gate opened, and Jackson limped towards it, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. Whatever came next, he was ready. For he was Jackson Hanoi, Orion Marine, and he had conquered the Rustmouth arena. The acrid smell of fuel and hot metal filled Jackson's nostrils as he stood in Rustmouth's dilapidated spaceport. Before him sat his hard-won prize, a battered Jezik-class freighter, its hull marked with patches of rust and poorly repaired blast marks. It wasn't much to look at, but to Jackson, it was the most beautiful sight in the galaxy. Krull approached, flanked by a pair of heavily armed guards. The crime lord's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Jackson. "Well, Marine, a deal's a deal. She's all yours." Jackson ran a hand along the ship's hull, feeling the vibrations of its idling engines. She got a name. Previous owner called her the Lucky Strike. Krull chuckled. "Though I'd say luck had nothing to do with it. You earned this ship, Marine. I've seen a lot of fighters come through that arena, but none quite like you." Jackson turned to face the crime lord, his expression guarded. "I appreciate the opportunity. But why? Why go to all this trouble?" Krull's scarred face grew serious. "You Orion types, you think you're better than the rest of us, hiding behind your shiny stations and your fancy tech. I wanted to see what you were really made of." He paused, his cybernetic eye gleaming. "And I have to say, I'm impressed." He gestured to the ship. "There's fuel enough to get you back to Orion space. After that, you're on your own." Jackson nodded, then extended his hand. "Thank you." Krull looked surprised for a moment, then clasped Jackson's hand in a firm grip. "Good luck out there, Marine. And if you ever get tired of playing soldier for the Douglas clan, there's always work for someone with your skills in these parts." With a final nod, Jackson boarded the Lucky Strike. The interior was cramped and worn, but functional. He made his way to the cockpit, settling into the pilot's seat with a mixture of relief and trepidation. It had been years since he'd flown anything larger than a shuttle, but his training kicked in as he began the pre-flight sequence. As the engines roared to life, Jackson felt a surge of emotions: relief, exhaustion, and an odd sort of gratitude. This god-forsaken planet had nearly killed him, but it had also reminded him of who he was and what he was capable of. The Lucky Strike lifted off, rising through Xerxes IV's atmosphere. Jackson watched as the sprawling expanse of Rustmouth grew smaller, then disappeared altogether. As he broke through the upper atmosphere and into the star-studded blackness of space, he allowed himself a moment to reflect. He had seen a side of the galaxy far removed from the ordered perfection of Centrium. It was brutal and chaotic, yes, but also vibrant and alive in a way he had never experienced before. The people of Xerxes IV, for all their flaws, had a resilience and adaptability that he couldn't help but admire. Jackson set a course for Orion space, his hands moving confidently over the unfamiliar controls. The nav computer estimated a journey of several weeks, accounting for necessary stops to refuel and avoid known pirate routes. As the Lucky Strike's hyperdrive engaged, propelling the ship into the swirling vortex of faster-than-light travel, Jackson felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He was going home. But a small part of him wondered if he would ever be the same after his experiences on Xerxes IV. The stars beckoned, and with them, the promise of home. But as Jackson settled in for the long journey ahead, he couldn't help but wonder what other secrets and adventures the vast, untamed reaches of space might hold. He was an Orion Marine, yes, but perhaps he was something more now too, a survivor, a champion, a man who had looked into the heart of chaos and emerged stronger for it. With a small smile, Jackson Hanoi leaned back in his seat, watching the hypnotic swirl of hyperspace through the cockpit window. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. For now, though, he had a long journey and a lot to think about. The Lucky Strike dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder, the vast expanse of Orion space stretching out before it. Jackson let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. After weeks of travel, dodging pirates and navigating treacherous asteroid fields, he was finally home. As he approached the outer defense perimeter, his comm crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel, this is Orion Defense Command. State your identity and purpose." Jackson leaned forward, his heart racing. "This is Lieutenant Jackson Hanoi, Orion Marine Corps. Service number 02275 to 8441. Requesting permission to dock at Centrium." There was a long pause, then Lieutenant Hanoi. "But you were listed as killed in action. The OSS Intrepid." "It's a long story," Jackson interrupted. "One I'd prefer to tell in person. Please, I need to speak with command immediately." After a series of scans and identity verifications, Jackson was finally given clearance to dock. As the Lucky Strike was guided into one of Centrium's massive hangars, he felt a wave of emotion wash over him. The gleaming spires of the space station, home to over 1 billion souls, loomed before him, a stark contrast to the brutal world he'd left behind. As he stepped off the ship, Jackson was immediately surrounded by a team of security personnel and medical staff. He submitted to their tests and questions, understanding their caution. To them, he was a ghost, a man returning from the dead. The debriefing lasted for hours. Jackson recounted every detail of his ordeal: the reactor meltdown, his crash landing on Xerxes IV, the brutal arena fight, and his long journey home. His superiors listened with a mixture of amazement and concern. "You've been through quite an ordeal," Lieutenant Admiral Chen said finally. "But you've also brought back valuable intelligence on a part of space we know little about. Your actions reflect the highest traditions of the Orion Marine Corps." Jackson nodded, feeling a swell of pride. But there was something else nagging at him, a question he couldn't shake. "Sir, with all due respect, why didn't anyone come looking for survivors from the Intrepid?" The Admiral's face grew grim. "The situation is complicated, Lieutenant. There have been developments while you were away. Developments that could change the face of the galaxy as we know it." As the Admiral began to explain, Jackson felt a chill run down his spine. A new alien threat had emerged on the fringes of Orion space, one that made the challenges of Xerxes IV pale in comparison. The Orion military was stretched thin, facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. "We need every skilled warrior we can get," Lieutenant Admiral Chen said. "And you've proven yourself more capable than we could have imagined. Rest, recover, but be ready. We'll need you back in the field soon." As Jackson left the debriefing room, he found himself looking out over the vast expanse of Centrium. The orderly streets, the efficient transport systems, the peaceful faces of civilians going about their daily lives, it all seemed somehow different now. His experiences had changed him, given him a new perspective on the galaxy and his place in it. He thought of Krull's words back on Xerxes IV. about there always being work for someone with his skills. For a moment he wondered what path his life might have taken if he'd stayed in that lawless frontier. But as he watched a squad of Orion Marines march by, their armor gleaming and their steps in perfect unison, Jackson knew he was where he belonged. He was an Orion Marine, sworn to protect this civilization and all it stood for. But he was also something more now, a man who had seen the darkness of the galaxy and returned stronger for it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever alien threats emerged from the depths of space, Jackson Hanoi would face them. Not just as an Orion Marine, but as a survivor, a warrior tested in the crucible of Xerxes IV's unforgiving arena. As he made his way to his assigned quarters, Jackson allowed himself a small smile. He was home, yes, but his journey was far from over. And in a strange way, he couldn't wait to see what the galaxy would throw at him next. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.